The United States government now owns nearly 10% of Intel, and it might be the most controversial business deal of 2025. On Friday, August 22nd, President Trump announced that Intel agreed to give the U.S. government a 9.9% equity stake worth $8.9 billion. But here's the twist. Trump claims America paid nothing for shares now valued at $11 billion. This isn't just any company. Intel is America's last remaining manufacturer of cutting-edge computer chips, competing directly with Taiwan's TSMC and China's semiconductor ambitions. The deal has sparked fierce criticism, with Republican Senator Rand Paul calling it a step toward socialism. But supporters argue it's essential for national security in an era where chips power everything from smartphones to military weapons. So, how did we get here? Is this a brilliant strategic move or government overreach? Let's break down the deal that could reshape the global tech landscape. To understand this deal, we need to understand how Intel, once the king of Silicon Valley, became a company in crisis. For decades, Intel dominated the chip industry. Its processors powered the personal computer revolution of the 1990s and 2000s. The company's Intel Inside slogan was synonymous with cutting-edge technology. But Intel made a series of catastrophic mistakes. When Apple launched the iPhone in 2007, Intel missed the mobile chip revolution entirely. While competitors like Qualcomm and ARM-based designs conquered smartphones, Intel remained focused on PCs. Then came artificial intelligence. As AI exploded in recent years, NVIDIA graphics chips became the gold standard for machine learning, leaving Intel scrambling to catch up. The numbers tell a devastating story. Intel's revenue has declined from $79 billion in 2021 to just $53.1 billion in 2024, a 33% drop. The company posted its first annual loss since 1986, bleeding $18.8 billion in 2024 alone. Intel's stock crashed 60% in 2024, its worst performance in over 50 years. By early 2025, Intel's market cap had fallen to around $100 billion, less than half its peak value. The company that once defined American technological dominance was being left behind by Asian competitors like TSMC and Samsung, while domestic rivals AMD and NVIDIA ate its market share. Recognizing the strategic threat, the Biden administration launched the CHIPS and Science Act in 2022, a $52 billion program to rebuild American semiconductor manufacturing. The goal was simple: reduce America's dangerous dependence on Asian chip production, especially given rising tensions with China over Taiwan, where TSMC produces the world's most advanced semiconductors. Intel became the biggest beneficiary, receiving promises of $8.5 billion in grants plus $11 billion in potential loans. The company pledged to invest over $100 billion in new U.S. factories in Arizona, Ohio, New Mexico, and Oregon. These facilities would produce the most advanced chips on American soil, critical for both commercial applications and military systems. But Intel struggled to deliver. Construction delays plagued projects, the company continued losing money, and competitors questioned whether Intel could execute its ambitious turnaround plan. By August 2025, Intel had received only $2.2 billion of its promised CHIPS funding, with the rest held up due to performance concerns. Enter the new variable CEO Lip Bhutan, who took over in March 2025. The Malaysian-born, MIT-educated executive had a stellar track record, previously turning around chip design software company Cadence. But Tin brought controversy. His venture capital firm had invested in over 600 Chinese companies, including some with alleged military ties. On August 7th, President Trump dropped a bombshell, posting on Truth Social, "The CEO of Intel is highly conflicted and must resign immediately." There is no other solution to this problem. Trump's concerns centered on Tan's extensive Chinese investments through his firm Walden International, which had funded companies potentially linked to China's military. The timing was terrible for Intel, the company desperately needed government support to survive, but now faced a direct confrontation with the president. Intel's stock dropped over 3% following Trump's statement. But for days later, everything changed. Tan flew to Washington for a White House meeting with Trump on August 11th. Whatever happened in that room transformed Trump's opinion entirely. After the meeting, Trump posted, "His story and rise is an amazing story." The president had done a complete 180. Sources close to the negotiations suggest Tan made a compelling case about Intel's national security importance and his commitment to American semiconductor leadership. The meeting set the stage for the unprecedented deal announced just days later. Here's exactly what happened. The U.S. government will purchase 433.3 million shares of Intel common stock at $20.47 per share, giving it a 9.9% ownership stake. The $8.9 billion investment comes from converting previously allocated CHIPS Act grants, $5.7 billion in unused grants plus $3.2 billion from the Secure Enclave Defense Program. This is crucial to understand. The government isn't spending new money. Instead, it's converting grants that were already promised to Intel into equity ownership. The $20.47 purchase price represents a discount to Intel's then current trading price of around $24 to $25. The terms heavily favor the government. The U.S. receives non-voting shares, meaning no board representation, but gets to vote with management on most shareholder issues. Plus, America gets a 5-year warrant to buy an additional 5% of Intel if the company ever sells more than 49% of its foundry business, essentially preventing Intel from selling its manufacturing capabilities to foreign competitors. Trump celebrated the deal on Truth Social. The United States paid nothing for these shares, and the shares are now valued at approximately $11 billion. This is a great deal for America, and also a great deal for Intel. Not everyone is celebrating. Senator Rand Paul led Republican criticism, posting, "Isn't government ownership of production a hallmark of socialism? Wouldn't the government holding a portion of Intel signify a shift towards socialism?" Other libertarian-minded politicians echoed concerns about government interference in private markets. Critics argue this sets a dangerous precedent. If the government takes equity stakes in struggling companies, where does it end? They point to the 2008 General Motors bailout, where the U.S. took a 60% stake and ultimately lost about $10 billion when it sold the shares. But supporters counter that semiconductors are fundamentally different. They're critical infrastructure for national security, like defense contractors or strategic energy reserves. They argue America can't afford to let its last major chip manufacturer fail while China aggressively builds its semiconductor capabilities. U.S. government takes stake in Intel. $8.9 billion deal reshapes strategic industries, boosts stock 5%. The timing aligns with broader geopolitical trends. SoftBank had just announced a $2 billion investment in Intel days earlier, and major tech companies like Microsoft, Dell, and HP publicly endorsed the government deal. This suggests growing private sector support for strengthening American semiconductor capabilities against Chinese competition. But questions remain about execution. Intel still faces the same fundamental challenges that led to its decline. It's behind technologically, losing market share, and struggling with massive capital investments that may not pay off. Government ownership doesn't automatically solve these problems. The Trump-Intel deal marks a historic moment in American industrial policy. For the first time since the 2008 financial crisis, the U.S. government has taken a major equity position in a strategic company, not to save it from bankruptcy, but to ensure national security in a critical technology sector. Whether this represents smart strategic thinking or dangerous government overreach depends on your perspective. What's clear is that the global semiconductor industry is becoming increasingly militarized, with countries treating chip production as a matter of national survival. Intel now has the funding to continue its ambitious U.S. manufacturing expansion. But the real test comes in execution. Can the company actually deliver the advanced chips America needs to compete with China and Taiwan? The stakes couldn't be higher, and now American taxpayers are literally invested in the outcome.